Stretching is actually really similar to lifting. It's well accepted that you need to do sets when you lift. You lift, rest, and repeat. And that's because you need to work very close to or at failure. From a bodybuilding perspective, hitting failure once isn't really enough to inspire change in the body. Getting close to failure between 5, 10, or even 20 times a week is usually enough to inspire muscle growth. But there is one problem. There isn't 20 days in a week. And that's why you do multiple sets, because you can't fatigue your muscle enough by just doing it one time. But why is the skinny guy teaching you how to build muscle? Well, all of the principles we just talked about also apply to flexibility training in one form or another. Stretching every day is great, but it's usually not effective because even though it seems like you're stretching a lot, you're actually just not really stretching enough. One set isn't really gonna do much. But if you do 2, 3, or even 4, now you're starting to make that progress. According to this review, which includes 23 studies, 5 minutes a week is the minimum to gain flexibility. But let's put that into perspective. Let's say you stretch all of your desired muscle groups for 30 seconds every single day of the week. Well, the math works out to about 3.5 minutes a week, which is not 5 minutes a week. Usually people with EDS or other hypermobility disorders can make progress on lower volumes, but it comes at the cost of joint integrity. Think about it. If all of your tendons, ligaments, joints, and even your skin is a little bit stretchier than it should be, you can get put into some pretty compromising positions. And the crazy part is, you might not even know it. But people who don't have connective tissue disorders, stretching every day just isn't enough. So if your goal is flexibility, treat your stretching like strength training and do more than one set. But David, why don't I hold the stretch for 5 minutes once a week and then just be done? Great question. Well, according to this study, stretching for 30 seconds is more effective than 15 seconds, but I feel like most people could have guessed that. But the thing that really got me is that stretching for 30 seconds was better than 60 seconds, huh? Stretching for 60 seconds or longer is definitely not useless. In fact, the more advanced you get in flexibility, the more valuable longer times hold. But for somebody who's a little bit more new to it, 30 seconds will give you more value than a 5-minute stretch would. So if your goal is flexibility, 10 sets of 30 seconds is 5 minutes a week. But just like building muscle, every set needs to be at or close to failure in order to build muscle. But you can't hit failure when you stretch, because failure means you just ripped the muscle off of the bone or sustained some other type of injury. So avoid pain while you stretch, but every stretch needs to be at a high enough intensity that it's difficult to hold the stretch for the full 30 seconds. For instance, I can do the full splits, sure, but that's a really high intensity for me. So for training purposes, I don't go all the way down to the floor. I keep my joints slightly bent, and that's how I stretch for my splits. It's very, very intense that it makes me want to quit before the 30th second, but it's not so intense that I'm feeling pain or that I give up before the end of the 30 seconds. What I didn't tell you earlier about intensity with stretching is there's 2 ways to get that level of intensity that you need. You can do it passively by holding your furthest possible range or close to it and hold it for time. Or instead of going to your full stretch, back off a little and then flex your muscles as hard as you can and hold that for time. You can simply make any stretch active by adding resistance and fighting against it while you stretch. Or you can utilize a much deeper range of motion with normal strengthening exercises. But instead of holding that for 30 seconds, the goal is to find the equivalent time under tension with reps. If you do slower reps, focusing on the eccentric the whole way down, you only need to do about 10 to 15 reps. By the way, the eccentric or the downward movement of exercises results in hypertrophy, but not the hypertrophy you normally think of, which is just bigger muscles. It results in muscle growth lengthwise. So we already know that we need 10 sets of 30-second stretches per week per muscle group, but it's equally effective to do the active stretches or the eccentric exercises. But with the active stretches and the eccentric exercise, you get the added benefit of strength. The only problem is it makes you really, really sore. So instead of diving into the deep end of floppy Play-Doh flexibility, or diving into the deep end of the active stretches that make you so sore that you can't even reach the intensity to gain flexibility, choose 5 of your sets per week to be active stretches for your muscle groups, and choose 5 to be passive. That's the easiest way I've found to approach it. If your achy joints need a bit more help, go to stayflexy.co for my joint health supplements, and don't forget to subscribe. Stay flexy.